All right, so we're starting the webinar. Welcome to our webinar on localization strategies and processes in the travel and tourism industry, hosted by Wordbee. This event is hosted by myself, Robert Rogi, and my co-host, Tanya Faulkner.
Hey, everyone.
Before we start, this is our one and only moment of shameless promotion. Wordbee are the makers of the translation management and CAT tool currently integrated by major airlines, travel booking sites, hotel groups, and other companies in the sector. And we do have an event in Brussels on May 30th coming up now with 2 speaker tracks. So both business and technical themes, so you can bring your whole team. Several of our best customers will be there. There's lots of cool networking, lots of things to learn. And we do have a special discount for attendees of this webinar too. So do contact us after the event if that's interesting. Otherwise, we also have a podcast, which you can check out, and we interview cool people.
Okay, so today we actually have 3 really great panelists, and we're covering 3 different aspects of the travel, tourism, and hospitality industry, namely hotel experiences, online travel bookings, and ride-sharing or transportation.
So we're sure to get a variety of perspectives on the same questions. So let's present the panelists.
All right, let's start with Denica Utech. She is the online marketing manager at TUI Blue, which is a hotel brand by the TUI Group. She's worked with the company for 25 years already and has held different marketing positions for 15 years. In her current role, she is responsible for SEO and all translation services of the website, the app, and their blog. Is there anything you'd like to add, Denica?
No, perfectly. Thanks you.
Great.
Cool. And next, we have Ciara Serrano Temprado. She's the international SEO manager at GoEuro, which is a travel meta search engine that allows users to compare the price and journey time of different travel options in a single search. I used it myself. It was quite cool. Additionally, Ciara is the project lead for GoEuro's global expansion program, where she is responsible for localizing GoEuro now into 15 different languages in 1 year. So that's kind of a big project. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's most of it.
Cool.
And last but not least, we have Síliva Grisó Sayas. She's the content strategist at BlaBlaCar, and she's leading all localization and internationalization efforts. In case you've not heard of BlaBlaCar, it's a community marketplace that connects drivers with empty seats to passengers looking for a ride. And in her previous position, Síliva was the localization project manager at BlaBlaCar, where she was managing content localization for 22 languages. She's established automated processes and was also responsible for a big team of translators and copywriters. Hi, Síliva. Did we cover it all?
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so before we start, just a few things to cover. We are recording the panel discussion and we will share it in video form across all relevant channels, groups, and social media. Everyone who registered will also receive the recording link via email afterwards. And for our live attendees, which is obviously the best way to view, we would love to hear your questions for the panel at any time, either during the webinar or afterwards. You can just type in your questions in the panel on the right-hand side of the screen, and we will answer it either during the panel or at the end of the discussion, depending on the question.
Cool. So without further ado, let's get into the actual questions and talking about cool stuff. So we're going to start with content marketing and work our way towards localization. Since content marketing and localization are interlinked in the travel and tourism industry, we think it's a pretty big question. So we'd like to start with what is special about how people make travel decisions compared to other industries? And what are the associated content marketing challenges with helping people make their travel decisions? Whoever wants to start can just jump in.
Well, I think that travel, it's like a really emotional decision. So yeah, you see a picture of some place that it's nice and you want to go there. So it's something really emotional. So it's different from other industries. It's like you decide to go somewhere and you will put other expectations to go to this place. So I would say that that's like the main thing for deciding on trips. And the challenges is also for us as companies to be able to be there when the person is traveling, because I mean, if something happens during the travel, it can lead to a lot of frustration. So yeah, being able to be there, like to support the pain points, it's also one of the main challenges, I would say.
Mhm.
Right, right.
I must say it in the same way. Working in a big travel company, which is working worldwide, but I'm in charge for a hotel product, and we know in the total journey from beginning from the flight, the car, the hotel, often the hotel part is one of the main decision parts where people want to travel to. And I must say that still the decision which hotel, in my case, the people book is still often the price. Where is it? They must get very fast the facts. What is it for hotel? Where is it? What get I for my price? And what are the services of the hotel? And that on an emotional way. And there we have the also the part of the localization and translation, because you need content which is not only translated one by one, and that are often the decisions with the localization, because you need translations which are really emotional, and also sales, which have also a sales part for us. And so you have to bring that both things together. And so there's often the aspect, the big aspect regarding the localization and translation part.
Mhm.
Also, if I can add, for BlaBlaCar, would be that actually for our drivers, it's not like a new trip they have to do, but actually they have already planned their trips, and we have to convince them and that there are also other people doing the same trips. So it's not about creating this travel need, but saying, hey, you are going to this small city, but for sure there are also people around you that you still don't know, you haven't met, but they're also needing to travel that date, at that hour, going to the same city. So it's actually being present where they have already the trip in mind, and then put the idea that, yes, I can build all the people that are also making the same trip that could do with them.
Right. So it's about timing and reaching them at exactly that right time. Right. But before they book some other method of transportation, but after they've decided on their trip. It's like a window. So that's an interesting question then. So like related to timing, how are you trying to reach people at a certain time in their customer journey where your content is going to be most effective?
So for us, we are trying to reach the customers in the whole customer journey, from the moment like I want to go until the end of it. So because like you can fit different kinds of content in every step of the journey. Like, for example, you can inspire someone by seeing an ad in Facebook, or seeing something like a blog post about like the best 10 beaches in Sicily or something like this. And then you can target there the customers. You can target further then when they start to think, okay, I want to travel there, I don't know how. That would be my case. Like, okay, then you can offer options for bus, train, or flight, and try to emphasize the advantages of all the travel modes. And then would be like once they have the decision made. For example, I don't know, we want to go by train between Berlin and Munich. Which facilities can I find in the train? There's Wi-Fi there. Can I charge my phone? How far is the station from the city center? So I think that you can cover the whole journey. At least in our case, I guess like in every aspect is different, but we as a transportation mode, you need to go somewhere and go and come back. So we try to cover the whole journey, but with different type of content. So we don't try to put the same content everywhere, but just every step of the journey requires different content.
Cool. It's like a puzzle.
Yeah, a little bit, yes.
Actually, I could add that for BlaBlaCar, it would be the same for actually showing all the possibilities where you would need to travel. So it's not about only places, but even like showing you that someone is going to visit their family or someone is going to the concert. It's more about the need that you have for traveling. You are not traveling to a city. You are going there for some reasons. And this is how you connect with the idea that you're also going to travel with other people. Mm-hmm. And also what we just tested and worked very well was actually showing after the trip, so a few months after someone has already done a trip, showing them the experience that they had like 6 months ago. So you could reach a member saying, hey, 1 year ago, 6 months ago, you were going to Barcelona with that person, and it was great. And this I would say like memories actually converting a lot, so that you actually reminding that you did that trip before.
That sounds like a very good strategy.
And difficult to localize, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So perhaps it's. So it's again the same way as we act. Our big advantage is that we often have the client data backdated to the last 10 years, for example, because we often have the same products in the same countries and the same source markets. So we can often compare it with backdated client data, which we often have for 10 or 50 years for some kind of regions, perhaps in Europe. So we know our clients very good, and we are also working, of course, on new clients to get them in an early stadium of their plans over social media and also over on blogs and apps and so on. But the part of our existing clients and existing client data are minimum main important fact for us, which we work on regarding our CRM managers and our own CRM systems and so on. So we also have a look on the existing clients very often.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So, you know, when people plan their trips, when you're not a frequent traveler, it can be tough to decide where you want to go, what you want to do, how you're going to travel. And I think it is important that you find the right content. It can be quite overwhelming since there's so much content available, especially in the travel and tourism industry. How detailed should it be, and how do you decide on what content is the right one for the people you want to reach?
Yeah, I think that is most of the challenge of our daily business, because on one hand, how you said, you have to have more positive facts or more offers than the other ones. On the other side, how I said at the beginning, sometimes the decision is only made at the end by the price. So you have to find the level in between that, and that is really that is really the challenge. How you can find the level between these both things, and that's really hard. Yeah.
And related to what you were saying earlier about like emotional content and facts, and then we also have prices, right? Are there like different types of buyers in travel and tourism? Some who are more emotional, and then others who are like very serious planners and want to plan everything about their trips way in advance. Is that something that you often see, and you have to make content for like different kinds of people?
Yeah, I think like that in the travel industry, like everyone travels in different ways. There are people that are traveling for business reasons. People, as Silvia said, that are going to visit the families, so that's also different. People that are traveling just because they found a cheap offer or because they are doing the trip of their life. So I think it's very, there are a lot of different type of travelers, and I think like it's very difficult to target them all with the same content because it doesn't, like one size fits all, it doesn't work here. So I think like the company should like decide which kind of traveler is the one that it's like the most relevant for you. So I don't know if you are if you look for young people or older people with families or something like this, you need to decide on which is your persona. So which is your target, and then try to focus that for the content to this to this target.
Yeah, but what we can also see is that that the time till from the booking to starting the journey gets more and more short term. That's our that's what we see in our systems. We often know our target groups. We know that families have to plan more weeks or a little bit earlier because of the holiday season and so on. But overall, we must say the times from booking till starting the journey gets more and more short term.
Can only agree with what you just said. The only thing that I could add for that is that on what we have already learned at BlaBlaCar is that like when you already choose your persona, you should already forget about all the other messages that you would like to include in your communication. So at the beginning, we were going to like, okay, we don't know which is the best option with the best content or idea that would work. So let's put like the 5 of them. So somewhere in the title and the body, and then subtext, and then the CTA is going to be something different. So we were just like mixing everything. And the best thing that actually works is that you choose one, this is your best bet, and then you go directly to that, being very short and to the point.
Cool.
Perfect snackable content.
So when we actually talk a bit more about, I mean, content's all related to localization, but what I would be interested in, do you localize user-generated online advice, like for example, comments that people leave on your site, or you know, like feedback or recommendations? Do you also localize those parts?
Not so far.
We don't.
Until no.
Okay, cool.
What's the future of that? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I think it was the same question.
Yeah.
Are you planning to, or is this something that you think, or is it even something that you think could be worthwhile investing in, or just have all sorts of languages mixed in terms of feedback?
So from our side, we haven't looked into it like to integrate that in our product, but yeah, maybe it's something that we should start to look into. So we have our Facebook community, and we try to use the messages we get in Facebook to try to understand what the users are looking for, but we haven't done like anything in our product so far.
Yeah, sometimes we make some cross checks between those channels and also recommendation systems, which we also need in our own hotel reservation systems. So we sometimes try to make some cross checks between that one and our own quality checks, but it's not with a real system. I cannot say that's a real standard system at the moment.
Yeah.
So on our side, so we would have like the user-generated content we have is the biographies on the profiles, or the descriptions, that like additional comments that drivers write when they offer their rides, as well as the ratings that they leave to each other. So when we looked at that a year ago, we actually realized that the main usage at BlaBlaCar right now is done by people within the country. So we did first expansion to other countries, but right now the main usage is still that you use the carpooling, you use BlaBlaCar to move from your city to like a city around, and it's always the same country, apart from some cross-border trips in Ukraine, Russia, or Germany and Poland. But we definitely look into that for the coming months, so that mainly for the ratings where people from different countries could actually take advantage of the experience from other travelers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a good opportunity for using like neural machine translation instead of human translation, specifically for user-generated feedback? Or is that something that should be translated perfectly by human translators?
I would personally don't go with the human. Sorry, go for it.
When I sometimes see the comments, I'm not quite sure about it. I must say that ad hoc the decision would be difficult.
Yeah.
Mm.
So when we looked into that, we realized that almost all platforms, they use automated translations. It's not human translations. Also because from the user point of view, you are not expecting already like having a right translation in your language. You know that it's already a translation from another real person, like text that another real person has written. And because mainly for the fact that it's always the same content. So when you leave a rating, it's always about the same topic. You could actually improve the system. So the algorithm is going to translate the messages. This is why we would rather go for the automated translation.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Interesting.
So what do you say? Shall we talk a bit about SEO?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to everyone I think all three of you are pretty knowledgeable at SEO, so, and it's like travel industry. Yeah,
we'll just have to talk to you about it. If we have SEO experts here, we'll just need to discuss the topic. So I think we all know that the travel, tourism, and hospitality industry is one of the most competitive worldwide for SEO, if not the most competitive. How do you identify SEO opportunities in target languages, and how do you improve your SEO localization processes along the way?
Big question. To be honest, I must say I'm working now for this hotel brand. We started 2 years ago, and most of our source markets are at the moment in Germany and in Great Britain. So we have the fact that we only have to look on about 4 or 5 source markets. So we are still at the beginning of this process. And I think about 80% of our clients comes at the moment from Germany, and I'm starting. We are a big company which is leading here for 40 years now. But when you have a new hotel brand, you start from the beginning, and we are now after we opened now about 8 or 9 hotels. And we are starting now this thing for the British and the Turkish and Russian market. And for us, it's it's a very hard thing because we have only for the SEO stuff and localization stuff only one person, and that's me. So that's always the time with the gap of time, of budget, and so on. But also comparing the thing, what I said, that our source markets, Germany and Great Britain, made 80% of our sales. So we start with that thing on 3 or 4 languages and countries, and are not quite sure how to go on with that due to the facts I said.
Yeah, it's a big task for one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too much for one person.
Yeah. So we must see what we can handle and also what is necessary because of the things what I said when you know that 80% of your clients come from here, you must also compare it and say what is necessary and what is really makeable by us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for us, I mean, one way of seeing, like, I don't know, like not new topics or potential topics, it's checking what competitors are doing. Sometimes it's like investigating a little bit if they are talking about something that we are not covering, and also trying to see what the users are asking. For example, to our customer support team, so they have a review and they track all the questions and calls and emails from customers. So we can always use that and say, hey, there's really a lack of information about this topic. So maybe we could do something on our website about that because people is asking about it and they are not finding information online. So I would say that these are one of the two main things that we are doing, trying to find new niches where we can go for the travel. Like always like checking what the market is doing, how the market is evolving, like the users and the competitors.
And how do you localize that then? Like, do you find those niches and then localize that content, or do you find the niches in the target markets and make content?
So the way we do it, it's usually we have like a kind of a global strategy for all the markets, but after that, every market implements it locally. So if we decide that, I don't know, that we want to make a big campaign about train stations where you can charge your mobile phone because people is asking for it, that would be the strategy. So we would kind of have it, the research centralized and the assets creation centralized, but then every market would decide, okay, does it make sense for our market? Do we have something there? Is people asking for that in our market? So we kind of have a global plan, but then every single target market decides if that makes sense for them or not. So they know their market because they're native speakers. They're content marketing people for the country, so they know if it makes sense or not to work there. So we kind of like try to implement everything locally and not go for something that is going to be the same for everywhere, from every country.
Like a specific example on our side is that each language, so in 18 different languages, they're gonna call BlaBlaCar or carpooling in a different way. So with an English word, so different English words, then spelled differently. Then it can even be, in French, going to be a noun, in Spanish, going to be a verb. So even when we, for example, we built the homepage page, we have already to make sure which are the keywords in each country, and then have briefs very like general, so that we are consistent in like a generic way. But then, yeah, like mainly we use the keyword in each language.
Yeah, that's the same way we do. We also, every time we have a new hotel product in our online channels, it's standard that we make the keyword sets for that area, for that hotel, for that kind of business. And that's the standard when we make the content for every language and for every hotel.
Have you seen any changes in the last, let's say, 1 to 2 years in regards to SEO with all the Google algorithm changes and that kind of stuff? Did it change anything for your strategy or the way you deal with SEO?
Well, I mean, Google, for example, now is taking more and more place in the search results. So now they have Google Flights. They have as well this knowledge graph with a map that they can, you want to go from here to here, and they put you, okay, you can go by train, and they explain you the route. So yeah, we haven't seen effects for now that relevant on that, but I think that if Google keeps on avoiding people to click on the results, but just staying in the search results page because they have all the answers there, yeah, that might be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a serious danger. Yeah, I've seen that happen in other sectors several years ago, and it's a tricky line that Google is walking, especially in Europe right now, because they had the lawsuit about some of those similar concepts as well.
And I must really say that we spend more and more times for the optimization only to get a Google-friendly hotel website. But on the other hand, you have it as a competitor, and sometimes I'm not quite sure. I can't see it in the conversions until now. I only know we spend more and more time on that things only to do the needed basic things. But you really can't fix it. You can't get it. What it really brings for you, and I can't see it on the conversions or the things we do. So I always not really know what to do, and when you see where you spend your working time on, and that's really really a big challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Related to SEO positioning specifically, or related to what?
Yeah,
Okay.
related to that, and the all the things regarding the page optimizations, the technical stuff you should do to have a working technical basics, and to be a website which is friendly for this algorithm. We try to fix all that things, but we can't get it what is really necessary at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Guess it's always about testing it, then you'll see if it has an impact or not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, related to GoEuro, we thought it'd be cool to do like a, I don't know, kind of a cool thing here. So you're launching 15 languages in just this year, right?
That's kind of the plan, yes.
Right. So we kind of thought to ask Denica and Sylvia what their advice would be for you launching 15 new languages in a single year.
I must say it would not be possible. I must say, what I said. Okay, we are at the beginning of the hotel brand. What I said, and only on some future market at the moment. So I must say that I am in a totally different way. I must say I'm realizing about 2 languages a year with 35% of my working time. So, so there you can see how the levels are. But that is what is necessary and what is possible when you have to organize it like that.
So my side, my advice would be it would depend on the language families of the languages you are gonna launch, because one of the surprises I had during my localization experience was when we launched Mexico. I thought that it would be very easy in terms of localization because we already have the Spanish website, and it was the main website where everything was already proofread and so on. So the one that we didn't have any doubts about. And then, so yes, I think we were too much confident at the beginning. And when I moved there and I realized how different like all messages were, not only in terms of glossary or keywords were different, but just like even the formulation, it's not just like the U was different, but also how you would even ask questions to be actually natural. Yes, I realized that it was actually more difficult to have 2 different variants of the same language, or languages that, quite close, than actually, I don't know, Russian and Spanish.
Okay, yeah, we have the website for Argentina as well, and we can see as well sometimes some problems like with the ranking for the Spanish domain in Argentina and Google. So
it's like you take for granted that it's going to be the same as your country you have already localized, and then not at all.
Yeah, it's tricky, yes.
So
we are not so far in the world with our hotel brand by now, but I only knew the problems regarding the difference between German and Austrian German. So you can also have it in your own surroundings.
Yeah, exactly. That's a thing. I mean, all the sometimes it's like it's not only doing country localization, but also like country and language.
Yeah.
Like you can have France in 3 different and more than one, like in 4 different countries, like in Canada, in France, in Belgium, in Switzerland. So that can be very tricky.
So what's your plan then, or how come you're planning on launching so many languages in just 1 year?
I mean, it's not sure. We want to try to expand our reach, and yeah, we have. I mean, we are starting with the first iteration, so we don't know how it's going to work. We are starting with the whole localization properly. So yeah, it's still in the beginning.
Right. Okay. But I suppose you have a big team of a big localization team behind you for 15. Wait, what is it? 15 languages, right? Yeah. It's not just you.
I'm coordinating the efforts. So, but yeah, we have like people that so we have people that help with the translations and all the QA of the websites and that stuff. But yeah, I'm like coordinating the efforts to make sure at least that the first iteration is successful.
Yeah. Well,
can I ask a question perhaps to Ciara? Can you give me a suggestion from how much content we speak about when you have to realize one new language? From how much content do we speak? Can you fix it by words or by accounts?
It depends. I mean, there are kind of like 2 types of content. One is the content that's in the website, like in the product, like everything you need to translate, like the button that says search, the calendar. That would be one translation. That's the first thing you need to do. And then the other one is like the content that's, I don't know, for example, in our case, our main product is like routes between A to B by train or by bus or by flight. So one is like is the main content that we have. And this kind of content, we are not translating it. So we are localizing it. Because, yeah, I mean, it's very different. For example, me as a Spanish, the way I travel in Spain is very different than the way a German will travel in Spain. They don't know how it works. I know how is the company, I know how the train stations are, I know where to look, but a German speaker, a German person, they don't know that, so it doesn't make sense for us to translate the Spanish content to the German. Because they have like different needs, right? It's like some people's like familiar, like it will be like people that's familiar with the market and unfamiliar. So we need to differentiate that.
Okay.
So like the thing that's manual content, we like I don't know, like a travel guide about trains in Italy. We don't translate that, so we have like original one. We have some points that we want to cover. You know, like all the markets should talk about language should talk about this, and this. But everyone does it their way because, yeah, as I said, like every country or every target market have their own needs, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So you said, well, you're responsible for the translation management and basically and managing your teams. So talking about translation management, what difficulties have you had in translation management, specifically integrating your online content with your translation systems? I suppose you're all using translation management systems, right? What challenges have you faced there in terms of integrating your online content?
That's for me?
All of you.
Okay, sorry. I mean, like, there was a part that was like, yeah, freeze the screen. I couldn't see anything. Okay, yeah, I'll just speak. For us, it's that sometimes, I mean, we have some content, like some things in the page that are like kind of automated. I don't know, like if you're doing a route between A to B and you are searching it, you can see like, okay, it's direct or has one change or 2 changes. So we try to have that as automatic as possible because, like for example, we have like placeholders that say, okay, if it's 1 change, it should be written this way. If it's more, it should be written this way. But then there are languages that, depending on the number in front of the word, the declination change. Like Polish, I think. So I mean, these kind of things are really, really difficult to tackle. For example, as well, I don't know, also in Polish, if you are going to a city or you're going from a city, they have different declinations. So in which way can you translate this name of the city, right? So that is one of the main challenges, because like every language, if you are talking about English, for example, they don't have masculine or feminine in the articles, but Spanish, German, French, they have it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for us, it's one of the main difficulties when we are like translating the website.
Yes, it's actually like, sorry.
No, you go. I actually had a question for you, but I bet you're going to say it.
Perhaps. So actually, our challenge is actually to find the balance between being like following the source or following to reach the natural language in each language. No, so it would be, as you were saying, the declinations or genders or pluralization that sometimes make it so. For example, if you have different genders when you use the past tense in Russian, then perhaps you're not going to follow the English source, but then you cannot actually be sure when you compare them if the differences on their performances is due to the translations or something else. So actually would be more our job on the localization management is actually make sure that we identify all these language differences since the beginning, so that we don't spend too much time like looking at data and saying, I don't know why this is that different. No, like this page performs less in Slavic languages than in Latin languages. So the challenge is more that we get to know what is unknown from our own languages.
That's interesting, because we haven't got I only have to handle 4 or 5 languages, of course, but we haven't got this problem really, because we only work with original native speakers, international native speakers, which often comes from the journalism, or which are often copywriters, and we are not working with travel I want to say travel agencies, with translation agencies, of course, because we had no good we had no good output from agencies, because the translations were one by one, and so we changed it, what I said, to native speakers which came from the journalism. So we feel very comfortable with the content and the kind of translation. We more have technical problems regarding the technical APIs from our content management systems, which are handled from our professional web agency, and we have more problems there, because our content management systems are very complex at the moment, with many individual programs, and so we often had some problems with the content when it comes from the CMS due to the API in the translation systems. And there I'm sometimes not quite sure if this problems is because of the translation software, or it's due to the problems of our web agency, which I need at the end, because they haven't got enough know-how for that things. So we often have to struggle with the technical problems and not with the content at all. There we feel very comfortable, because we can still handle it due to the fact that we only have 4 or 5 languages, and I stay in contact with all translators every week.
Mm-hmm.
So related to that, I guess the question that I would have is, when companies are thinking about localizing their site for a new market, what are some of the hidden costs that are associated with localizing for a new market? For example, you mentioned the technical aspects, but I suppose there's a lot of hidden costs for localization that people may not consider right away. And I was wondering if the panel could illuminate maybe some of these hidden costs. Or maybe there's not any hidden costs.
I was actually thinking about, I was just said about unveiling all the unknown things, no, like you were taking just for granted some things because it's the same language, or the culture should be very close. So I think that some culture on localization is when we prepare all the key messages of the strategy, opening the new market, then it's like thinking how it would apply on languages. And one specific example with Spain and Mexico is that in all our content for Spain, we're a lot talking about the differences, even with icons like about trains. And then we just like applied the glossary from Spain to Mexico to apply to the language, and then we realized that in Mexico there are no trains. It's like, okay, then how should I revert everything? So yeah, then we realized that we really have to be there and feel like how it is in the country to actually accelerate all the time that you're gonna spend knowing the unknown. Mainly that. Well, actually, because you cannot, even when we discuss with other freelancers or with other content specialists or copywriters about how their language work, well, they don't know what you still don't know. So even when I discuss with Russian people, like, okay, tell me about genders and how it's going to work, they haven't like studied comparative linguistics, so they don't know it doesn't apply to my language or the languages that I master. So it's really like you have to do a research task to actually get to everything you don't know. So, for example, last week I realized that you have also gendered in the past tenses. It's like, okay, this is why all our transactional emails from product are completely different in the structure in Russian, Ukrainian, and Polish. But they wouldn't like pronunciate those words like, yeah, past tenses in Russian are gendered. That makes sense to my mind.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
I don't know, if you like taking things for granted, you assume that, I don't know, that everything is going to be easier, like with English, and then you realize, oh no, like, as I said, like Polish, they have like tons of declinations and it doesn't work like this way. And yeah, and then I think like you learn along the way.
Denica, you already mentioned that you're not using external vendors anymore. You're using copywriters and like professional writers, not translators specifically. Yeah. Sylvia and Ciara, how about you? Do you use in-house teams or do you use third-party vendors or freelancers?
And a quick shout out to Burak, one of the listeners who asked that exact question.
So actually, since the beginning, we have worked with local teams or someone like native in the company, but as well with a direct contractor. So we have never worked with translation agencies. We hire one by one ourselves the contractors that are copywriters and also translators that are gonna translate with us. So we are gonna hire them as we would hire someone else in the team. So we are gonna post the job offer on Smart Recruiters and then like pass all the tests to check that they are good linguists. And then when there is like a language that we cannot test ourselves, then we are gonna, as local, like hire another person who is going to validate the linguistics.
It's the same we do.
No, sorry.
It's the same we do. Sorry.
From our side, we have some in-house speakers for like the languages that we already cover. But for new ones, we are working with an agency.
With an agency?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Is there anything in particular that you're looking for that you think is different for your industry than for other industries?
So I think at least for us, sorry, what do you mean exactly looking different? We look for an agency or the agency itself?
What you're looking for in an agency or in a translator specifically?
So no, I don't have that much experience in translation, so we just started with this this year. But no, I think I don't think we're looking for anything special. So just like we're trying to find an agency that they understand also what SEO means, right? Because we don't want only to translate the words, but also like adapt to the local market. Like for example, in Italy, you can say autobus, like that's bus, but the most popular term is pullman. So if you have someone to translate, autobus is correct, but for SEO purposes, pullman would be better.
Right.
So these kind of things, we need to have an agency that helps us. That they have like people that know a bit about SEO, and yeah, so that's something that is very important.
Yeah, also for us, like all the freelancers are also part of the brainstorming when we are actually defining the content strategy for the market. So for example, at the beginning, I was asked by the my manager, like, why wouldn't like get someone from here, like working in Paris for the translations, or even like myself translating into Spanish. It was like, you cannot, I mean, it's not only that I'm already mixing all languages by being abroad, but also I'm not living anyway, like any more the Spanish like activity, the Spanish like life of traveling in Spain. So right now, I think I would actually like go more to the French content, because I live how it is in France, but not in Spain anymore. And actually, when you hire all these freelancers one by one, you can actually choose that. Like all the freelancers that I'm gonna hire, I make sure that they live in particular places in their countries that make sense for me, and they are not just like in other countries where like they would not feel how it is BlaBlaCar in their countries. As well, that you can manage that they also use the service, so they use BlaBlaCar in their countries as well.
Yeah, I think the problem with agencies sometimes is that the people, so we try to provide them context about like what's the company about, which is our tone of voice, what's our brand positioning and everything, but it's very difficult because you don't see them. So it's like, it's not someone that you can speak and explain to them face to face, but it's more like, okay, you send all the context around the translation. And we have had, like with this first iteration, we have had some issues with some languages that the content was not translated the way we wanted, but because like it's very difficult to give context in this aspect. So yeah, I think that sometimes agency, it's good because it makes things faster. So if you want to scale quick, it helps a lot, but maybe for some content, it's better to have a freelancer doing that.
Our freelancers, for example, all live in their origin countries. There's no one living in Germany. And sometimes what I said, the emotional way to write the content and the SEO content is so important for us that we, for example, have also two native speakers which are not really good speaking German, but our source language is German. So they did such a good job, and they were so important for us that we always make in machine translation in advance, because they are not perfect German speakers, but they're so good guys that I made this machine translation before, so that that they know what we are talking about in the main topics. And then they're so good and so able to make this emotional content what we like to have. So so this native speaker original country thing is so important for us, and that they still not have to speak German as good as we by ourselves. Yeah.
That's cool that you're able to let go a little bit, you know, and let them take liberties and properly localize your content. I've seen in my career, you know, several project managers that really like to see this content be almost literally translated, because that way they would know that it's okay in a way. But in the end, I think sometimes it's better to let translators take liberties, and let them do, you know. That wasn't a question, sorry.
But I can understand like the point of having like more or less the same content everywhere. The challenge is that you understand from like the reasons why freelancers have to take their freedom. So like here at BlaBlaCar as well, like we needed like Brazilian and Russian exactly the same, because we actually measuring the performance of that specific page. So you have to make sure that they are equivalent. And the challenge was to understand why Russian had to go that far from English, and not just like or equal or just do whatever you want without knowing exactly what you do.
Right, makes sense.
So what are your strategies for consistency in terminology and style, and especially when you say you're working with I mean, it's very important to have the content you're in the target language not only translated but really localized, and you know, it might be quite different from the source text. How do you make sure that it's consistent in terms of terminology and style?
So from our side, we have like our brand guidelines, and that's our tone of voice, and something that we try to reinforce a lot in our in-house or freelancers. So to make sure that they understand, okay, this GoEuro, that's the way we try to communicate with our customers. And we have also like some terms, okay, like we, for train, we use this kind of things, and for buses this, and we try to be very specific about that. Like always like keeping in mind who is our persona, what are we as a brand? And from that, like having that very clear, we allow that every market uses that to tailor their content.
Mm-hmm.
So we often get in touch also at the end to our sales and marketing offices, which we often have in the source markets. So we make some cross checks at the finalization with some colleagues we have all over the world, just to make sure that we go together in the right way.
What we did first to actually be more consistent in our terminology is actually reduce the terminology we use. So it was reducing like an Excel of I think that we had like 200 words into like, we have like 20, and make sure that these 20 are really the same all the time, and not just like so many that in the end you don't actually need. We realized that we were using a lot of jargon by wanting to have like exactly the concrete wording all the time. And by this, I think that removing this terminology constraints, we managed to get a content that is much more natural.
Right.
Interesting. It goes back to the freedom thing. So we have a question from Celeste Martins over here, and she asks, wouldn't it be more effective to have in-house teams who would be involved in the company's routine and would know the aims and targets of the company? So, you know, I guess that the three of you have mostly external teams and people that are living in those markets, like we mentioned. What do you think would be the benefit of having in-house teams for you? Like, what do you think you're missing out on that would be cool?
So in our case, we have in-house teams. So we have in-house speakers for like for English, for Spanish, for German, for Italian, for French, and for some more languages. Because I mean, for these markets, we are already having a very good performance. So like having someone in-house, they understand the values of the company, and they are able to translate that better than people that's outside. So I think that in this sense, I think it makes more sense to have people in-house. But sometimes, like the whole hiring process, it takes so long. Sometimes, you know, like to find the speaker, to like hire them, the contract and everything, it can take super long. So sometimes it's easier to externalize some part of the process of translating and creating content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had an own translation office in the company, but we decided to source it out, I think 5 years ago. And I must say what Ciara said, it's right that always at the beginning, when you have to choose and make the contracts with the freelancers, you have to spend some time. Yes, of course, but after that, for me, it's no problem in the time of online and email. For me, it doesn't make any difference if this person is sitting here or somewhere in Russia. So for the ongoing projects, it's no problem for me.
Mm-hmm. So I think that we have these in-house people by having specific people in the local teams to actually be the point of contact, like to actually have this triangle. So we have international team, it would be me from the product team, then someone in the local team having the BlaBlaCar voice, but also the voice in their language, and the freelancer. And we always try to have this tension between these 3 points so that we keep the business needs, the linguistic needs, and the person, the local teams can be the mediator for everything I don't understand from the freelancer. But at our stage, it doesn't make sense to have an in-house person to do all the translations, mainly because we don't have as much volume to to hire someone else.
Right, right.
I guess on a related note, we have another question from Adam, who's asking like what the best way would be for a translator to approach companies like you, like travel and tourism companies, to start, to start basically freelance translating for them. You both, I mean, Ciara, you said you're working with an agency, but Denica and Sylvia, you're working with freelancers as well. Would you appreciate people reaching out to you, or is it, what's your approach, or where do you find your freelancers?
Yeah, I find it it was a new thing for me when I started with this theme 2 years ago, and that was also the question which I had, where I can get the best freelancers with. And I must say I spoke to many colleagues. I had a look on online networks and find out who's the best for me, but this was a really difficult process. So I think there should be better, well, my opinion was that the online network websites where often freelancers you find on are not on a really good standard, and sometimes I ask myself if the freelance network websites are from 10 years ago. So this process was of course a little bit difficult, but at the end I'm feeling very comfortable with the guys I found there. Yeah, I must say that this is not so easy. On the other way, when freelancers or translators often contact my person because they know other colleagues from me, and so I often get offers also from freelancers via email, but often they communicate with me when I don't need a new one. Yeah. So I think there could be better ways to find each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually, yes, we appreciate all the people that contact us for joining us and work with us with the localization, because actually that was our approach. So we actually already put the job offer on our website because we want translators to actually want first to work translating BlaBlaCar in their countries than the other way around. This is how everything started, and this has been like working until now for the 18 languages we adapt. Like I would say, like, except for one, all of them are actually ambassadors in their countries, and they use it a lot. So definitely we like when they reach us directly. And if, for example, there's no like a free position, I always like gather their CVs for future collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a good way of handling it, I guess. And it also makes it easier once you are looking for people. Like Denica said, it can be tough to find someone if you don't have a pool of translators already.
Right. So that's kind of that's a really nice answer for Adam, which is like contact the people for the products that you really love. That's a good way to go. So we are like, I know everyone's sitting here and we're like drinking water because at least in Europe, for the listeners who aren't here, it's like been early summer after a long winter. Everyone is like hot and stuff. Can we do a little bit more, or should we call it a day?
Fine.
All right.
Fine.
Okay, so let's do this last thing, which is geolocation. And we were talking with Tanya before the webinar, and we were like, well, maybe we'll run out of time. We won't get to do it. And I'm like, no, because I really like this subject. All right.
You have a couple more minutes to discuss this.
Okay. All right. We'll make it so quick. It's going to be so quick. So we looked at the way that the 3 different sites, the way that you're handling things like geolocation and language selection and stuff like this, and basically how your sites work. So we're going to quickly describe it, and then ask you basically what your strategy is and what you're hoping to do in the future. So let's start off with BlaBlaCar. And we mentioned it earlier that there's a story behind it, which is pretty interesting. So basically, when you arrive to BlaBlaCar.com, you're prompted to select the place where you would like to take your ride, right? When you select that place, you arrive to the localized domain, so like .de or .hr. After you've selected it, you'll get forwarded there, even if you go back to the .com, because you're assuming that the people know, which is cool. The languages are displayed in the language of the country and not in English. And there's no flag or globe icon on the switcher. And I find that interesting. Like, do you put a flag or do you put a globe or do you put nothing? As always, everyone has the same questions, right? Right, and the currencies are connected to the language choice as well. So when you choose a language, you're going to get the currency for that particular country. So I guess the question is, like, what's the story, behind those decisions, and how do you want to use geolocation in the future?
Yes, so actually we use geolocation the way you describe it, because mainly the usage of BlaBlaCar is that people from one country would travel from their city to a city that is next to the ones that they live. So it would be 200 kilometers up to 600 kilometers away. So then we took the strategy of mixing put it all together, the currency, the language, and the domain of the product, because it made sense when we launched the product. Now that we are evangelizing the product and that we are worldwide not yet, but we are more and more known across Europe, and we realized that you could also use BlaBlaCar in Spain, in Germany, and then in Russia, then Italy. We have to change the mindset and not think that the same person living in one country is gonna use always the same, is gonna always try in the same country, but just like abroad. And we would need to change the setup so that we can change the domain without changing the language. It's still not possible.
I guess that's a really big part of the localization as well. I mean, you started off right. I mean, when you were still smaller, it totally makes sense this way. And then once you grow, that's one of the challenges you have to face, right?
Exactly.
But you probably meet the needs of the majority that way still. Like I suppose for most of your users, that's awesome. It's just this edge case of whatever % that you'd like to grow with, right?
So actually it's the main need for drivers, because actually when you're going to take your own car to drive somewhere, you're going to do it in your own country. But it starts not being it's still the main case as well for passengers, but it starts being like used more and more, that as you already know this way of traveling, you expect to be able to travel the same way abroad. So we read and listen more and more some anecdotes from people, testimonials where they knew about BlaBlaCar in one country and they expect to have it in there as well in theirs.
Right. Yeah, that's super fascinating, the way people change over time, how they use your product and stuff. That's a good problem to have, really.
Really good, yes.
Okay, let's look at the geolocation at GoEuro. So when we look at your side, we see that you suggest flights, trains and buses from the current location to the destination. You leave the content in English, but it can be changed with the flag icon in the upper right corner of the screen. So what are the results of these choices, and what do you see for the future of geolocation and localization for your side?
Can you repeat the first question again, please?
What are the results that you see with this choice?
The results? What do you mean by this? The results. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, what do you see with the results? Like leaving the content in English and only being able to change it yourself, the language.
I mean, actually, it depends on in which language you are searching for us in Google, or in which language you have your Google set, right? I mean, if I'm Spanish and I'm looking for trains from Barcelona to Madrid in Spanish, probably Google, if hreflang works properly, that it should, will drive me to the Spanish page.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to GoEuro, we have like code top-level domain, country code top-level domain. So we have goeuro.de for Germany, goeuro.fr for France. So this way, it's easier for Google to localize. So Google knows already in which country are we moving to. So that helps a lot. So usually the users don't find the page in English if they're not looking in English. So usually they find the page in their language, because having like the top-level domain for the specific country allows to Google to understand better, okay, this website is relevant for the people for this country.
Yeah.
So usually like people not changing that much like the language. Usually they land to the right one.
Right, okay. Mm-hmm.
Any idea like what percentage of people do change the language? Like
I don't have the numbers for that. I don't think it's very big. I think like most people land to the page they want.
That's good. Right. Well, I really like it. Anyways, I like to. Well, I just visited the domain, which is sort of why I had this certain idea. But I do like the way that that it works, because I have, like, as a traveler, and I'm not really a normal case, but as a person who travels a lot, getting the auto-suggested language all the time can be kind of frustrating. But okay, so at TUI Blue, we noticed that you have a language selector, and there's not geolocation, I don't think, being used there. But there is a language selector, and then depending on the language they choose, you do have like variations of your site layout and some of the tools that are there. And I guess we were wondering, like, you know, maybe what are the variations for? Like, are you just testing stuff? And you know, how is that working out so far, the way that you have it set up?
Yeah. We started with the things the last 4-6 weeks, so it's a good question at the beginning now. As I said, our source market is Germany and of course Great Britain, and at the moment we are looking what language flags we are also put into the Google Search Console, for example, or of the site information of the website. We always have only one top level domain, which is hosted in Germany. On the one hand, we have some problems with that regarding the geo stuff, but that depends on what I say, how much time and how much clients we have from the other markets. So we are started now with the optimization for the British market, and there we had sometimes make the decisions what we discussed some minutes ago. Many of our English-speaking clients come from Great Britain, but they also come from the US, from Canada, and so on. And sometimes, and it's not possible for us to handle different top level domains. It's still not possible for us, and so we make now the decisions where we want to place the website especially. And if we make an optimization for Great Britain, for example, we have to decide what we make with the US, with the Canadian, and so on. And so we are increasing now our hotel products, we are increasing now the other source markets when we make the decisions at the moment where we can make the optimizations on the technical way of our website. What still is working is, of course, that we see in most of the times where the IP addresses comes from, and normally also what Ciara said before, we can identify the clients where they are sitting normally. And over the Google setup, normally the clients from the UK always comes to the English version of our websites. So that should work so far, but we can make it better.
Cool, interesting.
Okay.
All right. Well, we satisfied my desire to talk about geolocation. So I'm sorry that we stayed late.
One quick thing before we wrap this up, just to give some more value to our listeners. What is your one tip that you would like to share with the travel and tourism industry about localization? Like the one thing that you've learned and you wish that maybe someone else had shared with you before?
For us, something that I learned recently is like having the glossary. So as I said, I'm not a translation manager, so I'm more SEO manager. So it was the first time that we were kind of like leading this project of launching multiple languages at the same time. And so the first, I sent the translation to the agency with context for everything, but I missed to put like the glossary about SEO terms that were relevant for every language. So now is something that I think that's very important. So before starting to do anything localization in a language for SEO, you need to understand which are the most relevant terms for your specific business and for your website, and then make sure that these are included there, because that's something that we have missed in this first iteration, and that we are like now going to do for the second.
Mm-hmm. Me, if I can say something before I run completely out of battery, I'm ready 5%. I would say something related to what I said before, that is like try to know what you still don't know. So it's identifying your own biases in terms of like content creation, but also on localization. So everything you need about one language, like make sure that you take the altitude that you need and then think from completely other perspective. So it would be, okay, I have this knowledge, let's identify why I need it, and then like what I know, and then try to gather the same, like a different answer to the same question. So it would be the other way that another language is going to solve your issue. This would be my tip. Easy tip.
Cool. And if you run out of battery now, it was nice to have you on the show.
Denica, you got a tip for us as well?
Yeah, as you can see with my example in this evening, my recommendation, my tip is that we still sometimes have to work on the basics. How you can see we three handle this kind of thing differently. So I think there is still many basic work to do in the tourism. And we have to inform all our marketing department colleagues and so on what is possible with localization, because often they still see it as a normal translation and are happy when the job is done. But I think there's a lot to do in tourism that all people know and understand what the differences between translation and localization is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I can see in my daily business, and as you saw in the examples which I told you today.
Yeah, if you have this issue, for example, with design, that sometimes they say like, hey, can you make this word shorter in Spanish? It's like, no, it's not possible. It's like 3 words. I cannot make it shorter.
Yeah.
So that's something that happens a lot.
Mm.
So yeah, like making sure that you understand localization, it's a challenge.
Hey, we should do the next webinar on like how to convince or how to persuade your team that what you are doing is really important.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's been really great tips.
Cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up. So you were three amazing panelists with great answers, and it was really cool to see, you know, different companies in the translation industry and different points of view, and companies at different stages of their life cycle, and I think it was super cool. So thanks for coming onto the webinar.
And on a related note, I mean, we've talked about translation management. Just like a quick note there, you know, Wordbee, we have a translation management system, and it could definitely help you manage your translations, automate your processes, and it's a very easy way to collaborate with your freelancers as well as agencies. You know, just maybe you want to do the 15-day trial for anyone who's listening. And don't forget, you can also meet us in Brussels at the end of May for our user meeting, where we have great panelists as well. We'll discuss quite a few topics, not only about Wordbee, but the industry as well. And it would be really cool to see some of you there.
Come to Brussels.
I will be there. I will be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
Well,
right.
thanks
for
again.
having us. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
have a nice evening.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.